There's perhaps no video game series more victimized by its previous greatness than Silent Hill. The first three games are widely considered landmarks for the horror genre, although the fourth entry is still loved by many. But it's mostly Silent Hill 2 and 3 that get the most praise. And out of those two, let's be honest, it's Silent Hill 2 that has cast a large, pitch-black shadow over the rest of its franchise. The internet has done a successful job of deifying Silent Hill 2 to absurd levels, to the point where, when Silent Hill 2 Remake was having its rollout in 2023 and 2024, thousands of fully grown adults were acting like children trying to protest the game. They were fearful that their favorite masterpiece would get bastardized. Thankfully, the Silent Hill 2 remake was truly fantastic, but it still left us with two questions. Number 1, can Silent Hill have an equally as good original entry? Number 2, can Konami themselves develop such a game? The last time they tried to answer both of these questions, we got Silent Hill: The Short Message, which is an incredibly boring game, if you even want to call it that, with some decent ideas and an awesome monster design, but Silent Hill deserves better than that. And finally, Silent Hill F seeks to answer those questions and live up to its name. I want to make it extremely clear that despite being a big fan, I am no Silent Hill scholar and historian. I know that Silent Hill 3 was the first entry to have playable segments outside of the titular town, and Silent Hill 4 continued that trend. According to some very quick research, Silent Hill: The Short Message was the first game to take place outside of the United States, and Silent Hill Origins was the first game to go back in time chronologically. Silent Hill F seeks to tackle both of those ideas. Not only do we go back roughly 60 years to the 1960s, but we also do so in Japan. A lot of fans were fearful of this change because to them, Silent Hill is synonymous with the foggy, northern East Coast Maine-inspired vibes. But again, Silent Hill 3 proved with its first half that we don't necessarily need that. The first third of Silent Hill 3 reminded me more of a metropolitan area such as New York. Silent Hill F takes place in Ebisugaoka, a small town that was once noteworthy for its work provided by the coal mines and dam construction. But over the years, the mine was shut down and the dams were finished, and the town was left with really nothing special. What I love about Ebisugaoka is how the 1960s allows the town to feel stuck in some sort of transition. We still get architecture and structures that feel slightly old. There are moss-covered shrines everywhere, important but neglected. I loved seeing tiny little bridges crossing over small streams of water, the outdoor laundry machines, and the tiny gardens. I've never been to Japan, and I'm sure there's tons of areas that still look like this, but I just love the cozy and nostalgic feeling of this town. It all clashes with the electric lines towering above, a sign of change that will only grow more powerful with time. Silent Hill F does run on the controversial Unreal Engine 5, but thankfully this game looks and plays at a smooth and high quality level. The characters and environments are bleeding with realistic quality. I played on performance mode and my frames almost never dropped. Sometimes you get taken to these areas called the Dark Shrine, which feel like landscapes from a nightmare. They sometimes made me feel like this is what a AAA remake of Yume Nikki would feel like, with these ever-expanding labyrinths meant to make you feel lost, afraid, and alone. The monster designs were done by Kira, an artist who I can't seem to find much information on. Luckily, these designs are really strong. The basic enemies feel a bit too Silent Hill 2 inspired for me, clearly inspired by mannequins, but everything else looks amazing. There are monsters that are just giant hulking masses of flesh and faces. My favorite is the scarecrow enemies. Their faces are so disturbing, and I love the introduction to them in the field area. They also do this thing that I love when every time you move the camera away from them, you hear footsteps, and then when you turn back, they're still in that static position, but they're a little bit closer to you. It's really disturbing. The designs are excellent, but unfortunately, the monsters kind of have like a slight plasticky look to them, mostly in the cutscenes. There's like a weird shine on them. It clashes a bit awkwardly with the realistic looking characters. It almost looks like real people are fighting giant action figures. Maybe the people making the models didn't want the enemies to be too frightening, I'm not really sure. One of my favorite aspects of the game is the journal. It not only gives us insight into who Hinako is as a character, but it gives us beautiful art of each character and monster, alongside a nice chunky description. Oftentimes these descriptions will expand as the plot continues. I love it when these types of things are left to the player's interpretation, like how the entry for Junko, Hinako's sister, is pretty nice for the duration, until the last sentence. And there's also the giant blotch of ink that's been spilt over Junko's face. It's almost like Hinako is trying to forget her sister. In the earliest Silent Hill games, sometimes you would examine an object and the character would tell you what the object is, but then just add a little bit of their personality. Like in Silent Hill 3, when you examine a cigarette, Heather mentions that she doesn't smoke anymore, which just adds to the fact that Heather was this rebellious teen who already had a smoking phase. The journal is just a better version of that because it's filled with Hinako's thoughts. And of course, we can't discuss Silent Hill without mentioning the music. Akira Yamaoka did such resonant work on the series during its early years that he began producing some of the games starting with Silent Hill 3. That's pretty crazy. I don't think I've ever heard of a game composer also producing said games. The man clearly knows the series like the back of his hand. But Yamaoka wasn't alone on Silent Hill F. Apparently, he was in charge of the music for the Fog World sections, which are the parts of the game in Ebisugaoka. Kensuke Inage was in charge of the Dark Shrine sections, the dreamlike labyrinths I mentioned earlier. I didn't know this until a few hours of my playthrough, but it made sense. The Fog World sections are my favorite of the game, and they're accompanied by some notable familiar sounds. Yamaoka is beyond talented at making me feel like I'm somewhere else, somewhere slightly familiar but also a little wrong. And to fit the Japanese tone of the game, there's a lot of wind instruments and strings. It is a safe direction to go in, but it works for the most part. Kensuke Inage did a good job on the Dark Shrine tunes, but these segments of the game were less enjoyable to me than the Fog World, more on that later. And the music here, while great, wasn't a huge joy of mine. And I'm sorry, I hate to be that guy, but I would be lying if I said I enjoyed this soundtrack nearly as much as the OSTs of the first 3 games. Again, I know it's unfair to compare, but it's kind of hard not to when the series was home to such extremely high quality tunes. There were also 2 other composers, but I couldn't quite find what songs exactly they worked on. The gameplay of every Silent Hill game gets put under an absurdly huge magnifying glass. For some reason, the fans usually justify subpar combat with narrative excuses.
The reason Silent Hill 2's combat isn't very fun is because James is just a guy, he's not a warrior.
Stuff like that. But by that logic, it makes no sense that 17-year-old Heather Mason knows how to properly use a submachine gun and a flamethrower. It's just a video game, guys. Silent Hill F focuses primarily on melee combat. There's no firearms at all. You can lock onto enemies, dodge attacks, perfect dodge them, light attack, and heavy attack. If you're worried that this sounds like some sort of action game, don't worry, it's not. Hinako's attacks still feel slow and vulnerable. She never feels like a strong fighter, which is good for the horror element of the game. There's also the focus attacks, which cost a bit of your sanity meter but do a ton of damage. At first, I kind of hated the combat because of how the game slows down a tiny bit after every attack, but I quickly got used to that. It becomes especially simple when you realize that you can just do 1 focus attack and 2 to 3 light attacks to finish most non-boss enemies. There's a way to make the player character feel not very strong while also not sacrificing gameplay, and Silent Hill F mostly achieves that. I still had some deep frustrations like with the stamina system and sometimes not being able to find weapons. Yes, there's a weapon durability system here and I'm not that fond of it. Luckily in the Dark Shrine, the weapons you find in there can't break. Usually the game keeps the fights one-on-one, which is how I prefer my Silent Hill fights, especially in a game without guns. Sometimes they do give you 2 enemies at once, and that can really suck, especially if you're in a tight hallway. A lot of people seem to really criticize the combat in this game, and I can kinda see why, but I found a decent rhythm with it pretty fast. I do think in a game like this, it's important to not necessarily want the next fight. You're supposed to dread it, just like your character does. This isn't Resident Evil 4, this is Silent Hill. Other than fighting, there's of course puzzles and exploration. The game actually feels extremely linear, which didn't bother me personally. Oftentimes you'll just be in small alleyways with one little branching path to find some healing items or an inventory expansion. It took a while until I felt like I hit my first proper Silent Hill dungeon, about 3.5 hours, and it was a middle school. When I tell you I was smiling for a straight minute, I am not exaggerating. The locked doors, the puzzles, the map with like a million rooms, it felt so good to be back home. And it also felt like a nice little homage to the first Silent Hill to be in a school setting. As for the puzzles, I didn't really find any of them particularly too rough or too easy, and the journal does a fantastic job at recording all of your hints. You can even open the journal while attempting a puzzle, which is nice. There was a puzzle box in the school I had to guess my way through, but since I was able to do that, I guess it means the solution wasn't too complicated. I think it's also important to mention that coming into this game, I was planning to do the puzzles on normal difficulty and the combat on easy difficulty, because to me, combat isn't the point of Silent Hill. It's those vibes, that music, the story, the characters. And I was actually pretty surprised when I started up Silent Hill F and the difficulty settings were already exactly like that. Now, it's a little weird with the names. Story difficulty is easy, hard is normal, and then there's, I think, Lost in the Fog, which is hard mode. So it actually puts you by default on easy combat, normal puzzles. I just thought that was worth mentioning. There's also the save points in this game, which allow you to offer up healing items to the gods for more faith. Faith allows you to buy omomori, charms with specific stat boosts and abilities. You can also get these upgrades by using faith and ima. I found the requirements for more omomori slots kind of expensive. You need 1,500 faith for the first omomori upgrade and 3,000 for the next. Not necessarily cheap, and it made me feel like I had to skip out on getting other upgrades to save up for the extra omomori slots. All things considered, there are good dungeons here, good puzzles here, decent and slightly stressful combat. The most diehard of fans were concerned that this game wouldn't uphold the identity of the series, but for the most part, this game does. There are some gripes I had with it that require me to get a bit more into the story aspects of the game. At first, I'll just start with general story stuff that you encounter within like the first hour or two, but when I start getting into more serious spoilers, I'll put some timestamps on the screen. So overall with the story, this is where the game caught me the most off guard with my disappointment. One of the biggest selling points of the game that Konami was trying to nail into our heads was the involvement of Ryukishi07. Ryukishi is known for his When They Cry series, and the reason I sounded confused when I said his name is because I really don't know much about his work. All I do know is that Higurashi is a pretty loved piece of media. And once I saw that the protagonist was going to be a teenage girl in 1960s Japan, I had a feeling we were going to get a brutal yet honest story of gender roles and expectations. When you open Hinako's journal at the beginning of the game, we see that she hates her father for his controlling ways and alcoholism. She also pities and dislikes her mother for being nothing but a weak servant to her father despite his abusiveness. It's a very awful yet realistic situation, especially for the time. We also see that Hinako claims that ever since she was a young kid, she never really liked playing with girls. She liked playing with the boys like her best friend Shu. So I thought the story might steer strong in that direction. A young woman who doesn't identify or desire the path that her male-dominated society demands of her. But I feel like the game actually does not capitalize on this nearly enough. This game is on the shorter side, around 10 to 12 hours, and for some reason, the first 6 to 7 of those hours, I honestly truly felt like nothing really happened. Hinako, Shu, and their mutual friend Rinko are the only non-monsters left in Ebisugaoka, so they decide to go up the mountains to Shu's house and take the highway out of town. That's really it. That's the majority of the playtime of this game. Now, of course, there are also the Dark Shrine sections that I mentioned earlier. In these sections, Hinako is accompanied by a mysterious man in a fox mask. This man is leading Hinako to some sort of ritual. Now, the main reason I disliked these Dark Shrine sections is because it sacrifices my absolute favorite part of Silent Hill, the relatability of the horror. Silent Hill doesn't take place in haunted mansions like Resident Evil or abandoned space colonies like Dead Space. It takes place in normal locations like boring standard neighborhoods or places that we all visit like schools, hospitals, and office buildings. A lot of horror media is like a movie screen, a way to project a story to us. But Silent Hill is like a mirror. If you stare at it too long, you'll start to see the things you hate about yourself. It's disturbing and it's supposed to be that way. But by taking me to these fantastical locations in the Dark Shrine, you're turning this Silent Hill game into a fantasy. And that's not really Silent Hill to me. The Dark Shrine sections also house a lot more combat than the Fog World. Sometimes you'll fight 3 or more enemies at a time, and that's not very fun. And it gets even weirder when we end up doing the Fox Mask ritual, because Hinako unlocks almost like a devil trigger ability from Devil May Cry, and it's really jarring for this series. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit more spoilery, specifically into the characters, so I will put a timestamp right now. I'm honestly just super disappointed by how boring I found the characters. Hinako never seems to speak up when it's necessary. She doesn't discuss how much she doesn't want to be a traditional woman or a woman at all. It's not really that clear. Shu feels like an absolute nothing of a character, except that he's a loyal best friend and he wants to be a pharmacist. Rinko has one single character trait, and it's that she's obsessed with Shu and she's jealous of Hinako for their closeness. And there's Sakuko, who we get literally about 7 minutes with until she dies. Obviously, when you start a new game, book, or movie, or TV show, you give them a little grace in the beginning because you think they're going to build up the characters of the story. So I was interested in the first hour because I really felt like this game was going to start delivering on solid characters and themes. But it just doesn't really hold much weight. Again, it's hard not to feel disappointed when this series is home to some legendary characters. Even characters you aren't supposed to like Eddie from Silent Hill 2 or Vincent from Silent Hill 3. They both have iconic moments. You love to see them on the screen because you know that you're going to get some cryptic but disturbing dialogue. But I just found everyone in Silent Hill F pretty boring. The themes of this game do start to pick up once we see what the Fox Mask ritual is. Hinako is forced to remove some of her body parts, replace them, and endure, obviously, a ton of pain. The whole thing is a metaphor for how women were forced to sacrifice themselves both in body and mind for the satisfaction of men, basically a commentary on marriage, specifically arranged marriage. It's towards the end of the game that we finally see some flashbacks of Hinako's father abusing both his wife and Hinako. There's even a certain monster entry in the journal that states that a specific monster doesn't even bother attacking men. I absolutely love the concept of turning a woman's struggle in a male-dominated society into a piece of horror, and it's one of the reasons why I absolutely adore Silent Hill 3, but I wish Silent Hill F gave me more reasons to feel these things in the first half of the game. And I just wish these characters didn't feel so bland and empty. Speaking of bland characters, I should have mentioned the character designs earlier. I wish this game took place on a Sunday so that the kids wouldn't be in their school uniforms. By putting everyone in identical uniforms, we'd lost all chance at unique character designs that give us a deeper idea of who these people are. Like, imagine if Rinko was all dressed up in a really pretty flashy dress and Hinako was wearing a pair of men's pants and working boots. It would further boost the themes of both of those characters. Rinko trying to impress Shu and also embracing her femininity, while Hinako is doing everything to run away from that femininity. I also mentioned the enemy designs being pretty strong in terms of grossness and creepiness, and that is true, but I really do miss when the enemy designs and the boss designs had a lot of symbolism to them. For example, Hinako's father is a boss late in the game. We already know that Hinako hates her father. Instead of trying to reinforce his design with his character traits of alcoholism, debt, or being a failure as a family leader, we are left with a semi-generic pink blob. Now compare that to the abstract daddy from Silent Hill 2, who is a horrifying, sentient symbol of the sexual assault one of the main characters had to endure. I guess what I'm complaining about here is not that the themes are bad here, it's just that I wanted more of them. If you do any research on the development of Silent Hill 3, you'll know that Konami rushed the game out and did not let Team Silent fulfill their true vision for the game's story, but somehow, despite that, I still think Silent Hill 3 did a better job at painting the horrors of being a woman. When I first played the subway section of that game, it made me genuinely stop, put down the controller, and think about how my older sister must have felt coming back home when she used to live in New York. And that right there is the power of media and horror media specifically. It can make us see that our reality isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Overall, Silent Hill F is a good video game, and I think it would be kind of foolish to deny that. It looks good, it sounds good, and it has solid mechanics. I'm sure this is the type of game that gets better on replays, so you can get the alternate endings and really piece together the finer details of the plot. Do I think it's like some horror masterpiece that every single fan of the genre needs to play? No, not really. But I'm glad that Konami has proven to us that they can still make good games, specifically Silent Hill games. I opened this review up by saying that the Silent Hill franchise has been victimized by its own previous greatness. And in some ironic fashion, I ended up doing that during this review. I mentioned the things I loved about Silent Hill 2 and 3 multiple times, but I went into Silent Hill F not wanting it to be those games. I was excited for the new setting and time period. I was excited for the lack of firearms. I was open to the idea of a new combat system. And all of those things are actually pretty dang good. But I think the lack of strong character designs, symbolic monsters and boss designs, boring characters, and half of the game being dedicated to dreamlike locations took a lot of my joy away. Generally, when I do a review, I try to not use review scores because I think they're an outdated and dumb way to talk about art, especially video games. And my 8 out of 10 could look very different than your 8 out of 10. But if there's one thing I think we can all agree upon, it's that times are tough right now. The economy has been awful for the past couple of years now. So instead of giving a review score, I would rather just tell you the price that I would personally feel comfortable recommending this game to somebody for. Honestly, this feels like a great $40 game. It's very linear, it's very short, it invites replays, there's not a lot of depth to the combat. I just don't see this as like this banger masterpiece that you need to play right now for full price. So yeah, $40, that kind of feels like the safe recommendation for me. Overall, do I regret my time with Silent Hill F? Absolutely not. I think it is a good game. It's probably like my 5th favorite Silent Hill, so that's cool. I'm glad that I got that. This could have ended up way worse. And I'm just glad that Konami's back. Like, what else can they do with Silent Hill? Would they dare touch Metal Gear? Can they please give us a Castlevania game, please? What did you think about this game? Have you played it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you gonna wait to get it when it's on sale? What price do you think is fair for this? Anyway, thank you so much for watching my video. It really means everything to me. If you wouldn't mind, hit that like button, maybe subscribe. I try not to say that corny YouTuber stuff, but it helps. It really, really helps. Thank you. Have an amazing day.